Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Craig Guyman, and I'm a Senior Solutions Consultant for Binalyze. In today's video, I'd like to share with you how to create timelines using the Binalyze Air platform. There are a couple of different ways to do that. In this case, I'll show you the first and easiest way to do this. Simply click on the machine you'd like to create a timeline out of, click the drop-down menu under Timeline, and either create a timeline or add it to an existing timeline. The other way to perform this is to go back to the Endpoints page, and I could choose to add some filters here for a couple of different parameters, including my organizations. In this case, I'll choose Binalyze EU. And I'll add another condition or filter specifically for platform, since I want to create an endpoint timeline for Windows systems. And I can say add apply filter, at which point I'll have a number of different items from the Binalyze EU platform and that are only Windows that I can create a timeline from. You can choose to do up to 10 systems in any one timeline. In this case, I'll choose these. And from my Actions window, I have the ability to choose Timeline. At this point, I can just give it a name, in this case, Test BRC or Test Blue Ridge Cyber, associate it with the time zone that I'm in or where the data comes from, associate it with the organization that it comes from, and choose a case to associate this with as well, in this case, Blue Ridge Cyber. I can leverage Autopilot as well, which will add the items from the endpoint acquisitions of these endpoints. The drone findings from those endpoints will be found on the timeline. You'll also see that I have additional endpoints that I could add to this. In this case, I'll leave it as is and choose Create. When I choose Create, that will initiate the creation process for that timeline. While that's going, let's go into an existing timeline for one that I created earlier. In this case, this is for Liam's desktop endpoint. There's only one endpoint in this particular timeline at this point. What I'd like to focus on is the ability to search, filter, enrich, and export. We'll start by searching. If I wanted to search for something simple, in this case, StarCraft, as this is a game that is regularly played on Liam's desktop, you'll see all of the endpoint artifacts that include items that have timestamps associated with the word StarCraft. I can hover over each of those and you'll see the event details associated with each of those. If I select the SC2 editor, which for those of you who play StarCraft will probably recognize, if I see this as malicious or rare or suspicious, I can mark it as such. At any point, if I want to mark any of the other items in this, I can do that as well. There's a specific Blizzard browser .executable file, which I might also see as nefarious. So I can mark that as dangerous as well, which will eventually go into my export later. The other thing you can do is you can filter this data by a number of different conditions, just like we did in the first endpoints page, except for specific artifacts. In this case, I might want to search for a specific device name. This would be useful if I had multiple endpoints in my filter or in my timeline. I could also then filter for specific usernames, again useful when there's multiple users using these endpoints within the timeline. I can add to this, and I can say I want to add stuff like source. So there could be particular type of source that I might want to look for. Maybe one of these is an off-network system that I want to filter for. I also have the ability to filter by event type. So I can scroll down through the list or simply start typing in an event code if I wish. By filtering the data, you'll narrow down the scope of what's in your timeline, making it easier for you to search, tag, and identify items of relevance. This timeline can also be shared with others that have the ability to log into the Binalyze Air platform. The next thing I'd like to go over is how to enrich the data within the timeline. You can enrich this with 4 different types of data, including other endpoints, off-network systems, CSV files from SIM and SWORD platforms, and milestones. If I choose milestone, if in this case Liam has downloaded a piece of software or a game, and unbeknownst to him, that game came with malware, I might find out about it later and want to do some analysis, but I might want to note that there was a milestone including this downloaded game that he mentioned to me, so that I could pivot my investigation around that downloaded game that may or may not have come with some malware included in it. When I click on Save, a pinpoint will be added to the timeline, at which point I could click on it, and then I could see activity around that, such as USB activity, browser activity, or other downloaded activity. So if I was looking for a particular URL, I could simply type in www.microsoft .com, and if I typed that in, I might see some examples of something that he downloaded from Microsoft.com. Now, I wouldn't expect anything nefarious to come from Microsoft.com. This is just an example. In this case, Teams was downloaded, and you can see that very clearly from this URL. At any point, I can filter that out and change and pivot on different keywords if I wish to. The last thing you have the ability to do in this timeline is export the data. When you export it, a zip will be created, and that zip will contain all the information that you tagged or flagged and any milestone information that you added. That concludes my video today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, thank you and have a great day.